Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Nathan with Sixth Sense Snakes. I'm glad you found your way back to us. Sorry we've been off for a couple of days. My wife and I, Snake Mama, were at the Grand Canyon. We were in Zion National Park, out in Las Vegas, having a good time, getting away for a little bit. But we didn't forget about you. We didn't forget about the snakes. You know, before I get into this episode and talk about what kind of day today is, go ahead, drop a like, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Let us know that you're following along. And go ahead and answer a question that I asked over on our Patreon page a couple weeks ago. And if you're not a member of our Patreon yet, you should head on over there. The link is in the description or on the screen now. You can find us on Patreon. We're also on all sorts of social media channels. Thank you for your support if you already are following us and you're already a patron. We're going to get some of those benefits out to you ASAP. But here's a question I asked 2 weeks ago on our Patreon channel, and that is, what was your first impression of snakes, or where are you currently at in your feeling towards snakes? I know we got a lot of people watching this channel that are kind of iffy about snakes. I think a lot of people are in a very common place that they're afraid of snakes. They don't really want to be around them. They don't want to be in the same room. They don't want to touch them. They're curious, though. If you're on this channel, you're probably at least a little curious, and you want to see how we're approaching it from our perspective. And so let us know. Drop a comment in there, start a discussion, or just head on over to Patreon, where we start posting questions every week. We got some behind-the-scenes videos, we got some extra shots, and in particular, we're going to have a few shots over there for our patrons only about the topic I'm going to talk about today. We're not going to put them on YouTube, but we're able to show them on Patreon for our Patreon subscribers. So, I'm going to tease that a few times. So head on over there so you can see pictures and video about what we are talking about, what I'm talking about here today. So what we're talking about today is, it's a special day here at our house, our casa, and it is feeding day. So what does feeding day look like? How do you know what to feed snakes? There's a lot of videos out there. We got a lot of information. We want to thank Green Room Pythons. Bob Bledsoe is just amazing, has tons of information about how to be a great keeper. He is really the source of inspiration and knowledge that we leaned on when we started this. We've watched other people, but Bob is still my go-to. And one of the things that I learned quickly from Bob and his standard practice in the community is that you want to feed a snake that's still growing, especially a still growing snake. That's most of what we have here. 10 to 15% of their body mass, which means you need to weigh them. You need to weigh what you're feeding them. And they're snakes, so they're going to eat snake things. They're going to eat mice. They're going to eat rats. They're going to eat something called ASF. African short fur, I think is what it stands for. And we have one snake that eats ASF because they're a little underweight. They're a little bit behind. We got them in a special circumstance and they need a little bit of help. And ASF is just really nutrient rich. And so 10 to 15% of body weight, if you can eyeball it, that's a mouse or a rat or an ASF that's roughly the same diameter as the biggest part of the snake's body. Not the head, not the mouth, but the thickest part of the body, it's the same diameter. So whatever that looks like, the same size as that. You don't want to see too big of a bulge right after they eat. Just a little one, just to know that it's in there, just to know they're full, but not a big bulge. That's too big of a meal. So 10 to 15% of the body weight. And I weigh our snakes, most of them anyway, just about every week to make sure that they're getting the nutrients that they need, the sizes that they need. We order our feeder food from a company called Lane Labs. I heard about them on Bob's channel, and when I looked into it, they just have a great product at a great price, and you really can't go wrong with them. So if you're out there watching this, that I would highly recommend them. We've had a lot of great success. Snakes that were kind of picky eaters before we ordered from them, they've taken their first meal today, no problem. So it's a high quality product whenever picky eating snakes gravitate right towards it. So that's a real selling point for them. What do you need to prepare a meal for a snake? It's not like a kitchen. Our daughter watched us prepare this, and our son Colt watched us prepare it, and they were very curious the first few times we fed. Our son Cade was curious. Even my mother was curious. She wanted to watch. And so what do you need? Well, Ziplocs. Because we thaw out our frozen rats. We thaw those out for about 5 to 10 minutes, get them a little bit warm, and in the plastic bag so they don't get wet, so in hot water. And then once they get up to about 75, 85 degrees is where we discover that they're at when we pull them out of the hot water that we kind of put them in the sink. Then we use a hair dryer to finish the job of warming them up. We try to get them up over 100 degrees. You know, Bob's video said 110. There's people on the internet that will tell you 96 is good, 98 is good. So somewhere in there, we have a snake that seems to, as we fed her, prefer about 112 on the head. I don't know. But you might be wondering, how do you know? Well, there's a temperature gun. You might remember these from COVID days, you know, zap the forehead and find the temperature. These work great. You have to have one anyway to keep the cages the right temperature. You know, you zap the food that you're heating up to make sure it's the right temperature. And that is how you discover how warm it is. So I know when we take it out of the water that it's 75 to 85 degrees usually when we take it out. And when we're done with the blow dryer, the coolest part of the food is about 96 degrees. The head, we usually heat up to about 110. And it's because the head should be the warmest part, because the snake is going to strike at the warmest part. If you'd like to see what it looks like when a snake strikes, head on over to Patreon. We've got a video over there. Not going to show it on YouTube. Those get censored. But Patreon, you can go see some pictures on there. In fact, we've got a few pictures. So you might be wondering, okay, so that's how you know the temperature. How do you know the weight? How do you weigh it? It's real simple. You know, for the bigger snakes, believe it or not, what we use is our bathroom scale set to grams. And we put our bigger snakes on it, and they usually sit still long enough to figure out a rough approximation. You know, if a snake is 9.5 pounds or 8 pounds, you're still not going to feed it 10 to 15% of its body weight. You're going to feed it about the same thing. But aren't you curious? I am. I'm curious every week to see where they're weighing in at for that feeding session. So we use a bathroom scale, set it to grams, put the bigger ones on it. And yes, our biggest girl is Nagini, who you saw in our last video. And she's about 9 to 9.5 pounds. But how do we weigh the smaller ones? Well, it's pretty simple. When you get them out of their cage, oftentimes they're curled up in a ball, and they're not that big. Even juveniles, subadults, little adults, if they're curled up in a ball, they fit right on this food scale. Yeah? A lot of us probably have one. If you've ever dieted, like I have, you definitely have one. You probably have one sitting in the back of your kitchen cupboard that you haven't used in forever. Perfect. You want to get a snake? You've already got some of the tools for that. So yeah, we weigh it with a bathroom scale or a food scale, and that's how we know how big the snake is. And then all the food just fits on the food scale. I mean, it's snake food scale. It works, right? That's how we do it. And then, you know, we pick it up, and you don't want to hold it with your fingers because your fingers are within that temperature range I mentioned, right? 96 to 112. The snake's going to see that. That's going to look a lot like food to it. So you don't want to hold it with your fingers to try and feed it usually. You don't want to dangle it by the tail either. That's not a natural position for a snake to strike at prey in the wild. And so you need something like this. Now you can use kitchen tongs. I picked up these. This is nice and long, and so you know you hold the scruff of the food here, and you make it dance. It doesn't take long if they're hungry. They just strike right at it. You can go on over to Patreon and watch some videos and see some pictures. And then they do their thing. They expand their jaw. And really, it's very simple. Most of our snakes, when we got them, they were on live food. And I don't have anything against live food. I've heard stories about how the food can fight back, should fight back. I mean, if I was food for a snake, I'd fight back. And I don't want that to happen to the snake to get hurt, but I also don't want to traumatize a poor innocent animal. And so I prefer the humanely euthanized, frozen, thawed method if I can get our snakes onto it. And so far we've had some holdouts, but they haven't gone so long that we've gotten worried about them. Snakes don't have to eat every week usually. We try to feed our small snakes. Happy is our smallest snake, and Happy's had some health issues, and so we've tried to feed Happy about every 5 days. That's the one on ASF. But every 7 to 10 days for growing snakes, every 2 to 3 weeks maybe for full-grown adults. I mean, our 9.5 pound snake would probably be fine going on a hunger strike for a while, but we still tried to feed her regularly. Not right now. Right now, she and Hagrid are shacked up back there trying to to make some beautiful, beautiful babies that maybe you'd be interested in taking home as a well-socialized offspring of Sixth Sense snakes. But yeah, that's how feeding day works, and we've got a lot of snakes. So that's it. It's really not that hard. After they eat, they need to sit on the warm side of their cage. It's got to be the right temperature, the right humidity. We've talked a little bit about that before, but we're going to talk about that again. Really cool to watch. Go check out our Patreon page. Have I said that already in this video? Go check out our Patreon page to see some clips, to see some pictures, and to see how good eaters our snakes are. I know you're curious. If you're on this channel, you're curious about that. And that's it. That's the secret to feeding a snake. Go check out those pictures. Subscribe to the channel. Check us out on Patreon. Follow along on Instagram and all of our other social media channels. And we'll talk to you next week at the normal time.